Hi. Before we start the playback of today's session, I want to apologize for the audio and the video being slightly out of sync. It might be better to just listen to this conversation today. I will keep working on this to get it figured out for future meetings. Thank you for your understanding. My name is John Cornicello, and I'm going live on Mondays and Thursdays at 10 o'clock Pacific and 1 Eastern. Today, my special guest is Ken Yu. Ken and I met a few years ago when he was the studio manager for a place Bobby Lane was teaching at. Later, we both worked as freelance photo assistants at Creative Live, and last year we both helped out at Super Ice's Portrait Masters. So let me turn it over to Ken to talk a bit about himself and his Polaroid project, and then we'll open things up to questions. So take it away, Ken.
Hi guys, as John said, my name's Ken Yu. I specialize in being a photo assistant and digi-tech on big commercial shoots and advertising and this and that. Um, let's see, I've been in the realm of digi-tech and assistance for about 10 years now. Uh, got my start in Seattle with Chuck Blackburn, who is my main photographer that I work with day in and day out. Love the guy.
What
And
good timing.
yeah, I know, right? So what else? I'm so bad at these. Uh, so my Polaroid projects is based on kind of photographers and kind of behind the scenes per se. So I get a lot of fun, interesting people being us as photographers in the behind the scenes realm that no one really gets a chance to, which is kind of the focus of my Instagram, kind of has taken over now. Um, yeah, I think that's my intro.
Is that you clicking?
Oh, sorry. Nervous
That's
ticks. Put 'em
okay.
down.
That's okay. So yeah, let's see. What do we have to talk about here? You mentioned that you work with Chuck. You also
Hmm.
work with a few other people here in Seattle, and said as at Creative Live. What got you started in assisting? What did you go to school for photography or anything like that?
Yeah, so I guess to backtrack everything is Kalu Haynes, which is now on screen with us, is actually my high school photo teacher. So I started my journey with her basically and kind of became really, really quick to pick up photography. Like I think the first day I was in her class, I just kind of moved from being a student to a TA in about the day. So from there, it's just kind of it kind of grew into like, okay, I can see myself do this. And then I went to photography school up in Seattle at the now closed Art Institute of Seattle, where I got my degree, bachelor's in fine art. And from there, I kind of did the same thing where it's just like people recognized like that I had a talent and skill doing it in the more technical sense. So
Mhm.
I just kind of always like helped my fellow students out, helped my teachers out, and then one of the instructors, Barb, kind of took me aside and be like, "You're really good at this. I think you should like start photo assisting and kind of digiteching, learning Capture One, and all the fun like nuances behind the scenes." So I just kind of started like because of her, and then she got me my first real intern, or not intern, but like first assisting job with a good photographer, Jeff Inglestead. So I just kind of started there and just kind of one after another, word of mouth. It just kind of grew and grew, and until I'm like here right now.
So what's the difference between photo assisting and being a digitech?
So being a photo assist and digitech, it kind of the line for me blurs because I do kind of both jobs at once depending on the need. But as far as the sole digi-tech, I work behind the scenes as far as on the computer. So I handle all the files and the managing of the camera, if anything like technical computer wise troubleshooting. I handle that, making sure all the files are backed up, checking focus, checking making sure client has a monitor to see their work away from set usually. And then as far as a photo assistant, it's just helping with lighting and just kind of setting up the camera. Just kind of, I like to be the person. I call myself the person that's usually on set and just dealing with everyone else besides the client. I will handle everything else for the photographer. They can handle the client. I'll that's my sales pitch.
Yeah, yeah. When you're going out to do digi-tech, do you bring your own equipment with you, or are you using equipment already in the studio?
Both actually. So sometimes the budget can't handle my digi-tech kit. So usually I'm using their own gear or things that they've provided. Sometimes I bring my own. So it kind of depends on the need of the client. Sometimes I can walk in with no gear. Sometimes I walk in with just my computer. Sometimes I have to walk in with a computer and 3 external monitors that I have to hook up through like Apple TV is my go-to kind of like device to basically share my screen with everyone. But no one really needs to be like hovering over me. I don't need, I tend to not have the hovering art director because I bring in so many monitors that be like, they're all set up. Just go there. I have one for me, one for client, and one for the photographer usually.
Do you have a kit that you carry with you for assisting, like some tools or things like that, or just show up?
Yeah, so for tools of assisting, usually I have a go bag is what I kind of call it. So it's like a backpack full of equipment. It usually ranges from very simple kit like work gloves, gaff tape, some baby A clamps, lint roller, light meter, some, this is weird, but like the seamless Savage's like seamless like color thing, color chart. Yeah. So I keep like a few of those with me. Yep, those things. So I actually have like 6 or 7 of those just in my bag because sometimes like we need a different color or something, and it's just like a random thing I have all on me. So people are like, why do you have this? Yeah, so just like pick your color, like, because sometimes like we get a roll and it's like not the roll that they need. So it's just a handy tool for when the time comes. Like a lot of my kit is learned, like I acquire through time and just kind of like being on set with other people. So it's like the one time someone needs like a paper clip and I don't have a paper clip, then I just start bringing paper clips with me, and it just kind of turns into a mass of a kit that I kind of picked up from other photographers.
Yeah, I think you and I have a similar reputation. If someone says, I need something, we have it.
Yeah, exactly. It's like,
go ahead.
Or they don't know that they need it. And for some reason, I'd be like, does anyone have a blah, blah? I'd be like, yeah, here you go. It's like a fun kind of jolt of like, why do you have this? I'd be like, I don't know, someone else asked me for it. I get that
question many times.
Yeah, exactly.
There's a Japanese word, sadonko, for having too many books or books you'll never read. And I feel like just equipment or things like that. I have everything around me. You know, I need it. It's probably somewhere in the closet nearby. Like just like now, you asked for the color chart. I can just reach over and grab it.
Yeah, exactly.
Pre-plan this. I often talk about assisting as being a mind reader.
Yep, definitely.
We both worked at Creative Live, and it was always fun for when an instructor would say, well, what if we tried this? And either you or I would already have it in our hand before they even thought about it.
Yeah, those are always fun reactions from photographers. They'd be like, just kind of look around and be like,
how'd you do that?
Where'd you come from with this? Yeah, it's a great thing. I love that.
You're going to let Will in. Yes, I mean, anyone out in the audience there have questions, feel free to unmute and join in the conversation. It's not just me and Ken. That's why I'm
Yeah,
doing
please.
this.
I can only talk so much. My introvertness is like screaming.
And your
So,
heritage
Ken,
as
this is
well.
Joe. When you
Hi, Joe.
moved, yeah, when you moved to where you are now, what did you have contacts, or did you just kind of start reaching out? Just
Um,
curious, like, what's that like, kind of getting established in a new location?
yeah, I would definitely had more information for you by now if I wasn't locked down or we're all locked down. So that's definitely put a damper and a nail in a lot of projects I've been working on. So because I think I was fortunate enough to have Seattle as a base first, that people that came up from other places, like being New York, LA, San Francisco, just kind of etc., that I kind of had two or three contacts here already. So I reached out to them first to get more names. I went to kind of did what I do in Seattle, where it's like you go to the local camera stores, being like in Seattle for us is Glazier's. So here is Sammy's. So I went to Sammy's first, kind of reached out to them and talked with those guys and be like, hey, do you have an assistant list that I can get on or digi-tech list? So I started that route, and then I went to networking events like ASMP, APA is really strong here. So I went to those events and kind of networked from there, and also got on their listservs of assistants, and they also do photography. And then a few people reached out to me on there before this whole lockdown happened. So I think my wheels were starting to get traction here, but again, because we're all locked down, that kind of died down.
Yeah, I mean, I started my assisting back in 1979. Um, my first job was in a catalog studio where we shot 11 by 14 and 8 by 10 for everything, including fashion shots. I wish I still had some 11 by 14 chromes from those days, but that was crazy. Big Deerdorf cameras on giant stands and lots of hot lights.
So,
Come a long
John, a
way.
question for you is
Yeah.
those studios, did you ever have to use their earlier phase one backs? Like, was it
This is
the capture backs?
1979. We're Deerdorf film, 8 by 10 and 11 by 14 film. There was no digital then.
That's right. You were loading film and taking it to the lab at 3 a.m.
Well, all the places I worked at had built-in labs. They had their own E6 processor lines, so I just deliver the film down to our lab as we shot it.
Oh, lucky.
So, yeah, so I started assisting there for about a year and a half, and then moved to another catalog studio, and we shot everything to size, and that's why we used the big cameras, because then they just cut the photos out by hand with X-Acto knives and strip them together to make the printing plates. Very different world back then.
Man, I would have loved to see that process.
I remember my first assisting job was following a photographer around and picking up the Polaroids that he dropped on the floor. But it was fine. I liked it. It's like, well, I'm going to do that when I'm a photographer.
Well, I mean, we'll just start shooting more Polaroids, Chuck, and I'll just have a brim behind you.
Yeah, do you remember 8 by 10 Polaroids?
Oh, man.
They still make those.
Do they still have the processing machine?
I don't think it's a process machine anymore.
Yeah,
I'm not sure what it is, but I know new Polaroid, I guess is my word for it, even though they acquired the actual rights to be called Polaroid recently, that they do have 8 by 10 sheets.
Wow.
So
Josh just joined us. Josh, if you want to speak at any time, just feel free to unmute yourself. Josh is here in Seattle too.
Josh is a good friend, digi-tech and photo assistant as well. He is one of my favorites.
So it sounds like that's something you can make a
He
career
would be in the car.
Yeah.
So what kind of
Oh,
problems do you see most often? Tethering or programs not running or what?
um, that's kind of a hard question because usually I don't really think about those as big problems or any problems at all. It's just kind of comes with the territory that I don't really think about them. It's just if tethering stops working, if it's usually USB-C, it's fairly easy to fix by unplugging and replugging it back in the tether cord. That I found like that's the most reliable currently situation. But as far as like if the computer stops tethering, it's pretty quick to I'm just going to pause for like 2 minutes, restart the computer, then we'll resume the shoot. It's nothing has ever been on a set anxiety ridden for me. Everyone's, at least the people I usually work with, are pretty relaxed and understand like the process of everything. And it's also a time where it's just like, because you're usually shooting and shooting and shooting and going, that photographers tend to forget to drink water, forget to like go to the bathroom, forget like everything around them, that they just kind of get tunnel vision. So usually an issue is a blessing in disguise that I like to say. It's like their 5 minute smoke break or just pee break in general, and be like, oh, the computer stopped working. You should go to the bathroom. I'm just going to do this. So you find ways to in a sense, keep the flow of a day going. I don't know if that really answered your question, Ian. Sorry.
Oh, that's fine. Do you have a preferred program to work with, or you capture?
Capture One for sure. It's in my realm is the most reliable. Yes, you can't save to a CF card, which I find a lot of photographers gets anxiety over it, which I understand. Like you lose the backup on like the little chip that you have, but that's the reason you have me. That's the reason you have a digi-tech, is so you don't have to have that anxiety. I take that anxiety away and put it on a better drive, almost, in the sense of like I do back up everything fairly quickly onto other external hard drives. So I usually carry like minimum one, but usually like three with me, provided by client and the photographer. So it's usually my personal external drive, the clients, and the photographers. So that's 3 copies compared to your 1 CF and whatever's on my computer from tethering.
Are you
So
doing
that's
a
kind of,
real-time dump to multiple drives, or is it coming into Capture One,
I
going to one drive, and then you're backing up from those?
okay. So for that workflow, it's camera to my computer's hard drive as one, and then my computer to my personal external, no, photographer's external as the next step, and that's chrono synced to itself every 3 minutes.
Okay.
So I don't have to do it. It's always running in the background. And then I have my personal one, depending on how many docs I have and the flow, that runs every hour. And then the last one I do probably lunch and end of day. So it's kind of one of those like repetition and just kind of like, so they're stagnant in those ways because the photographer, like, again, shooting and file naming and changes happen so rapidly that having all 3 running at the same time is kind of not necessarily redundant, but just kind of, it bogs the system down so much that I find that it doesn't work most efficient. Most efficient is just kind of having one drive that constantly refresh. So you have that set, and then you have one you set for another hour. So those photos that you shot in an hour kind of are more or less like, are more concrete and set to go. There's not really much changes going on the fly, and like photos keep repopulating. So that's usually my system.
see any specific problems related to shooting on locations as compared to shooting in the studio?
Wind. That's the biggest enemy I usually find as far as working as a photo assistant, with like holding a reflector or like trying to have a high boy with an umbrella is nearly impossible and a really bad idea, because that light will blow heavily, and it's just not stable.
Yeah, what about on the Digitech side? How do you power out on location?
So out on location, because nowadays with USB-C, everyone can have like those small portable power banks that you can actually use those to charge your laptop. It's not really efficient, so you still need like a bigger power block, but those are more readily available and just better with the USB-C connection. For me, I rely on a external battery bank that's fairly heavy, because I am running, like you, John, like we're running the earlier 15 models. So those requires, like, I have an AC like plug-in that's still a portable one. So I have like 2 of those with me at all times for on location. So it's just a little bit more weight. But as far as problem shooting outdoors, it's not that different than in studio, besides the wind and the constant light changing. Weather. Like, it could start raining out of nowhere, given Seattle.
I agree about the wind problem. I've seen photographers set up fairly big soft boxes in locations where I knew the wind was going to kick up to about 35 miles per hour. Bad idea.
Yeah. So usually on those outdoor ones too, I advise, if we're raising anything high, it just has to be like a bell or a reflector on the light. Like I very strongly always advise against soft boxes or anything big, because again, like the wind issue, and also that you can get kind of the same look if you just put like diffusion material over it. Like, if someone complains that I'm not getting the like softness I want, be like, we can't get the same thing as a softbox, but you can more or less replicate it and find other ways to get the same results. Lighting's, yes, a science, but it's not an exact science when it comes down to it. That's what I believe anyways.
It's interesting to hear from you about not being exact science, because I think of you as an exacting person, just the way you line up C-stands and
I'm OCD on some things and not others. I know when to give in to.
Yeah. Do you find a difference in assisting on something like Creative Live or at Sue Bryce's conference versus a job for a photographer?
Ooh, that's a good one. I feel like Creative Live to our actual commercial stuff isn't too different. The only real difference is we have an audience and usually a video crew that follows us around. So that's a little weird, but I think you kind of get more used to it when you're in those, not high client situation, but like in those aspects of like, this client needs BTS for future marketing purposes. So I've also had to now sign a lot of model releases last year on a few jobs, because they were doing the same thing like we do in Creative Live, where they just kind of like have cameras that show what it's like. Yeah, basically everything. And then as far as the Sue Bryce, and that is interesting, because it's kind of like the best way I can describe that experience is like being in a NASCAR pit crew where you have to work so fast and so not precise, but very fast and just kind of tear down and then set up. And then also you have so many different photographers in one day that you have to be on top of your game, be like, okay, what do they need? This is
Right.
ready for them. This is ready for that person. It was a fun few days, but
Yeah, I remember like one week at Creative Live, I assisted both Tony Corbell and Joel Grimes. And Joel is
oh,
never use a
Joel.
meter, and Tony's used a meter for everything. And it's like, I have to remember each day, which one am I working with today? Do I pull the meter out or do I keep the meter hidden? You know, just little things like that, learning the idiosyncrasies of each photographer. You know,
Yeah, and
Matthew
having to
Jones
do
is
that.
another one with always have the meter ready and do, 10 readings for each shot.
Yeah, it's that's also another tricky part, which you definitely hit the nail on, is during those conferences or anything that requires more than one photographer in a day, you have to switch your brains up so quickly
Okay.
in like the next hour. Be like, oh right, they're not like that. They're like this.
Hey, Ken, I've got another question.
Yeah, go for it.
I'm not sure if this makes sense, but there must be times when you are considering working with a new client or a new organization or something that you don't know much about. Is there ever a process for you to kind of do some due diligence or background research on who you're going to be working with to make sure you understand kind of what you're getting into? So, I mean, I'm thinking of a situation where I've done one or two shoots where I ended up kind of uncomfortable with the shoot and had to kind of learn how to sort of navigate some issues like that. I'm just curious if there's an aspect to your work that ever where you're trying to understand the client, make sure you're comfortable with that client or the circum. I don't know. It's just, you can tell me if there's anything in there that makes sense to you.
Yeah, so Joe, the question I guess have for you with that is it like a client relationship as far as content, or is it like something you are unexpecting, like, oh, we're going to go dive in the ocean today, like that kind of situation? Or is it like one of those like, I'm uncomfortable because of what we're shooting?
Well, there are times with I had a recent shoot with people I didn't know, and just trying to figure out what they were asking for in a very compressed time frame. So there's that, not quite diving in the ocean, but what are there? But I'm more actually thinking back to a situation, different kind of shooting. I do theater work, and
Hmm.
ending up involved with a production that I didn't want my name associated with, but I'd already committed to doing the photography, and kind of taking a lesson from that. And we worked it out. It was all fine in the end, and everyone was very happy with how it got worked out. But kind of learning that, not just to walk blindly into any situation and assume that it'll just be like what I've always done or what I expect, but trying to be a little bit more thinking ahead of, well, who am I going to see? What are their expectations, and are those expectations that I'm comfortable meeting? I, I don't know. Again, it's just curious if that comes up at all.
Yeah, so that's a great question. As far as my realm as a photo assistant digi-tech, it stays the same, honestly. Like, we get different photographers a bunch of times, but our our day in, day out is for the most part exactly the same. John, tell me if you disagree, but it's like the content we're shooting and like the contractual side of it, which I personally don't like. That's why I do this specific job that we do, is because I don't need to handle the clients, or like kind of like, I don't want my name associated, because my name's never going to be really associated with anything because I'm helping the photographer. Like, my name's nowhere. I just do the job and I go home.
Mhm.
Like, there's not really much else that needs to really happen. But as far as unexpectedness, besides like preparation work goes, for me, I send out a questionnaire to new photographers asking kind of what kind of music they like, favorite favorite foods, allergies, just kind of other things like that to know the photographer. But usually, for the most part, I just kind of walk into set blindly almost, because
Right.
for my job, it more or less kind of stays consistent as far as like what I expect I need to do is exactly kind of what I need to do. The content's different, and like how we get it being like we could be in a nice cozy studio just shooting catalog work for the entire day, or we have to go hike up a mountain and get 3 shots. Like that's always different, but as far as like what I need to do is fairly the same. Now, John, do you have any input in that?
No, that's pretty much it. You just get to know the personality of the photographers you're working with, but you're coming in, you're doing your job, and you're out of there. I mean, they've got all the pre meetings, and they've got the billing, all the business side of it to take care of. We just make sure that the stuff on set happens the way it's supposed to. So, do you have any nightmare stories of your best or worst assisting jobs? You don't have to list any names with them, but is there anything that comes to mind?
They're not one of mine.
No, ours is always fun and like the best. It's one of those joys of getting to work with someone over and over again is you kind of become a family and just kind of like, the ins and outs, you just get along and it works. Those are always the greatest. Like there's no surprises. We show up and we do the job and we leave and everyone's happy. Those are usually the best ones.
Well, I'm thinking about one assisting job I had back in the early 80s was for a fried chicken chain, and we had to find the right piece of chicken. And this was in New York City, and they had to be driving around a van to different locations of their stores because they had to cook it in their pressure cookers there, and coming back with trays of thighs. And we went for like 14 hours to find the perfect thigh. And it was just like this super long day, and just surrounded by fried chicken. And back then we were using, I don't know if you've ever heard of these Ascar sun guns, but these gigantic strobe boxes. And they had a reputation that you always kept a broomstick handle nearby in case someone got electrocuted on it to pry them off of it.
Well, luckily photography has turned into a fairly safe and less taxing kind of situation with post photography and just like the lighting we have in general now with excuse me, with the new pro photos and just kind of like overall technology is safer, man, less scary.
Definitely. If back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, we had a lot of questionable equipment. Do you ever bring your own cameras to a job then, or do you have cameras even?
I mean, I have my Polaroid.
Yeah.
That's all I really need now.
I know.
No one expects anything else. If I don't bring it, I feel like I get kicked off the shoot or go sent home to go get it.
Nice.
You haven't said anything about that project.
Oh, gosh, what do I say about that? So I guess starting from the beginning is, I got my first, the blue 1/600 step from Polaroid, but sadly that was during the time that like Polaroid decided to stop making film. Yay for me. And then Impossible Project picked it up, and from their earliest initiation film to now, I've been testing and using them. And then I brought it to set, I think one day to just kind of, I think we were using one of my cameras as a prop. And then I was like, I have film for it. We can shoot it. And everyone, like all around the room, just like seeing people's faces light up, because Polaroid in that sense has died down. Oh, that's weird. Has died down. So people remember it as nostalgia, but didn't remember that film actually worked. So when I brought it, and I was like, we can shoot it. Everyone kind of had their facial expression kind of drop, like, we can use this. I was like, yeah, I don't care. And then so it kind of started there, and just kind of started like taking portraits of the actual like photographer, because I was just like, no one ever does this. Like the stylist gets the shot, or the style, like everyone else sets, like we're usually like so focused on work that we ourselves aren't really taking pictures, besides kind of like on our iPhones now for like BTS purposes. That I felt like this was a fun way to kind of camaraderie of like, this is the like, remember this time when we did this shoot together in X, Y, and Z? So it kind of grew from there into like, now I just kind of focus more or less on that side of photography, like being like us as photographers. And it's kind of like a nice tangible thing that people get to have, and also kind of turn into a yearbook thing. Yeah, I don't know what else to say about that.
So are you giving away the images that you're taking, or I mean,
So
what are you
no,
doing with them?
oh, that's also another great question, because everyone has asked me that for a while. I don't know what I'm actually going to do with them yet. Right now they're just kind of sitting in Converse boxes, like a stack of four of them, like all filled to the brim. So I think eventually maybe a gallery or maybe a book on it. But I think right now it's just kind of turned into one of those things where it's like, if you ever see me at a photo conference or on set, it's kind of, for me, it's one, for sure, a passion project, but two, also a great marketing thing, because now it's turned into the aspect of, oh, I want Ken because he owes me a Polaroid. I was like, okay. So I mean, it's a great way to just more or less get hired, because they they know my skills already, but it's just kind of an added bonus of like, they know they're going to get their Polaroid. So people get excited by that.
So do you see assisting in Digitech as your full-time career going forward? Do you have any aspirations to do something different? Do you want to be the photographer, or do you want to stay with the assisting? I mean, there's no right or wrong.
Yeah, there is no right or wrong. That's hard. I think before this pandemic hit, it was definitely a full-time, like, I just want to do this for the rest of my life, because I'm good at it. I like it. I get to still be around all the creatives and everything, but I also not great with handling negotiations, like what's my rate, budget, dealing with like client expectations of like walking them hand to hand with a new client that doesn't know really what they want, and all that fun stuff, where being a digi-tech and photo assistant is like, our role is, people hire us because they already know what we're capable of and what we have to offer. There's no questioning what we do, or like, why am I paying you this much? It's like, you either pay it or you don't, and I don't work with you. There's not like this like 4-day long bidding process. There's no bidding, there's no post-production, there's no real client expectation, because we already meet the expectations when someone hires us.
That's a good answer. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I guess for future, what the future holds, I don't know. It's hard to
Yeah, that's
say.
a tough
Like,
question just now with our whole situation here. Earlier, before we started this, we were talking about trade shows and what's going on with the future of them. You know, you've worked with a lot of people that do trade shows and
yeah.
travel with folks like Pratik and the like. And, what's the take on that?
I don't know, honestly. That's the scary part is do do we all go back to normal when this virus not subsides, or like there's so many uncertainties, like is this virus just going to die down or die out and we can get back to our 9 to 5, or does this become a thing where it's forever part of humanity and we just have to kind of not get over it, but like
Find new ways of dealing
do
with
we
everything.
yeah,
This
exactly.
is the week I would normally be down in Palm Springs for the Palm Springs Photo Festival down in California down there, but that's possibly going to happen in September now. But who knows? If this thing keeps going on, we may lose all of this year.
Yeah, like we may lose all this year. We might have to rethink how big a set is. Do we keep it to, do we have more health protocols in place as far as like, I feel like it's a producer question, honestly, of like, do they have to like now have those thermometer readings like in the ear like they do at hospitals to
Right. I
make
was just
sure
going to ask you
everyone
if
can
your
be in?
kit. If I was just going to ask if you're going to add a thermometer to your kit or a pulse oximeter or anything like that.
I don't think so, because I feel like it just might be me pushing responsibility off, but at the same time I feel like that's also kind of in the realm of a producer role, because they oversee usually a photo shoot, at least from a bigger production standpoint.
Yeah.
And also it's just like, will we still have these big production shoots, or will it be down to core teams where the art director won't be on set, or the art director won't be on set anymore and we just send them the files, so it's basically me, the photographer, and the stylist.
Yeah, I mean, now with meetings like this, can the art director be in another location and be just getting a feed from you? Have you set up anything like that?
Yeah, so before this happened, I sometimes set up a Dropbox to auto upload. So the same thing as ChronoSync, but I do it like a hot folder, so it just uploads to them. It's not the quickest way, and it's kind of like hard to get real-time feedback necessarily, but there are ways. And with Zoom and other screen sharing devices, it is a possible viable option now, but I don't know the resolution as far as like what they see, the colors, like
Yeah, I
maybe
guess it
it'll
would be
work
more for
out.
composition than color accuracy.
Yeah, I think it's just like you have to rely on the photographer and the retoucher to know that the color will be there.
Yeah. So, Chuck, do you have any stories about Ken that you want to share with us?
Let's
God.
see.
Oh, God.
No,
I
I
always
think
like to embarrass Ken.
I was working with another assistant in Seattle, Andrew Vanas. He moved to Portland to start shooting, and then he recommended Ken. And once he did that, it was like I've been using Ken ever since. And no, Ken is awesome. Like he said, he gets things for you before you even know it. Know you need it. You turn around and it's there, and that's awesome. He's great with the clients. When I remember we went to a shoot in Walla Walla, and there was Ken. First time meeting my Chateau Ste. Michelle clients, and they didn't know what to think of him until like they met him, and then it's like, oh, we love Ken. So the clients love Ken. He's great. He's my first guy I call.
Great.
Aw.
And we got a job coming up in mid-June for Chateau Ste. Michelle, just so you know. Second week. Put it on your calendar.
Okay, I guess
3
I
days,
booked the
3
job
days
then.
video, 1 day on location.
Okay.
But
So, Ken, if
it's
there
always great.
anything,
I recommend him to anybody that that needs an assistant. He's
Aww.
yeah, and being in San Francisco now, it's easy to travel. You've got easy access to travel anywhere you want to go.
I mean, I feel like there's always easy access to travel if you're near an airport. I mean, domestically, yes. Internationally is just a little bit of an issue, but eh. Yeah, but Seattle's a great hub. The two very easy airports, both an hour away by the BART
Yeah,
system.
yeah, transit systems. So, is there anything else you want to add to this, Ken?
No, I think I'm good. Does anyone else have any questions before I
Yeah,
guess
I'm
we
gonna
sign
unmute
off?
everyone so anyone can jump in and say hi or say something.
Ken, your hair's getting long.
Yeah, I was
Quarantine
going to mention
hairstyle.
that.
Jeez.
What do you think might change in the way of digi-tech or equipment being used to digi-tech?
I think Z- I think Zoom will definitely Zoom or any kind of screen sharing device will, as far as software goes, is I think the next wave. Hopefully via internet connection. Like it's kind of like a catch-22 of like if it works, it works. Like anything else that we deal with. Where if the screen sharing is a crisp resolution and they also have stable internet connection, they can see that the images that I share are viable. Then I think that's the next way of equipment handling is the screen sharing aspect of everything because of the coronavirus and kind of possibly a reduction in the size of personnel in the shoot. As far as other equipment, I don't think anything really changes. Like Capture One will still be here, Chrono Sync will still be a thing. Besides upgrading your laptop constantly, or just every 3 or 5 years, depending on
So, do you
size of
have,
workflow.
is there a wish list you have for things for the future? You know, stuff that where you see we really need improvement? I mean, if you were going to go out there to the lighting companies, the camera companies, the computers, what is something you feel is missing that would really help you in your job?
Ooh. I think we're already set.
Okay.
I don't because we tend to be scrappy and innovative. If something doesn't really work, we'll make something work.
Mm-hmm.
When not problem, but like when a situation arises, we'll find something for it. But as far as equipment for digi-teching and assisting goes, I think it's kind of the usual like, oh, our laptop needs to get replaced because everything's a higher file resolution and faster processing and just kind of like quickness of a shoot. But besides the kind of normal life cycle of any equipment, I don't really foresee much change.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
Ken, just a simple question. Do you have a backup laptop that you carry? Have you ever had just a laptop fail on you?
Yeah, luckily for me, knock on wood, I've never had a laptop fail on me. But yes, I do have a backup that I carry, or sometimes we just not lose tether, but kind of just go to we'll shoot to the card and just use use the iPad to view it remotely via like Canon's or any proprietary system to just view the camera, view the images in a bigger screen. So that's usually like my first. If we lose my laptop, that's usually the first thing we do is just to card, just to keep the flow going. Because having a backup is great, but it's also doubles the budget. So it also has to make sense. Like the client has to like, you know, pay for me to carry another laptop, basically.
Have you seen people use?
Oh, sorry. Ken, how first do you work with that don't have laptops?
Probably like 20%, give or take. They have the laptops, but they don't really care to bring it or need it because they are traveling. They'll have it for their own personal use, but I think as far as like digi-teching, they rather just have me have the system because all they want at the end of the day is the external drives. They don't care really what I use because it's all my system. So I'm familiar with it. Everything's kind of like hotkeys to my keyboard. So they trust that I kind of like will get the job done using my gear because I'm familiar with it and everything's kind of preset to how I use it.
I can see if you're traveling, that would be very beneficial.
Yeah. And it's a good kind of like they have their laptop as a backup too, and I have mine. So it's just kind of one of those like, even if we're using their equipment, like my computer just turns into a backup computer, like sometimes when we need it.
Have you run across people using what is it, Capture Pilot app on their iPhones during the shoot with Capture One?
Yeah, so I actually run that a lot too on set because it's great for star rating and not notation. I wish there was a note. I think there's a notation. Don't quote me on that. I haven't checked it in a while, but yes, I do run Capture Pilot as well. It usually goes to the art director because they can rate things on the fly, and it goes to Capture One on my side, so they can be doing their selects while the shoot is happening, and I don't have to worry about them needing to do it at the end of the day or just kind of like it's just a better workflow when it works. But yeah, it's a great system. I definitely recommend kind of the larger iPads usually for those because like anything, they want to see everything on a larger screen. But I do sometimes use my phone, especially when we're it's more for stylists also because they can use the Capture Pilot to shoot remotely when they're kind of styling and our camera's overhead. That's always a great use of the Capture Pilot. I hope that kind of answers your question, Ian.
Yeah, it does. How about the same thing regarding Hasselblad Focus and their mobile app?
Same concept. I have it, but I haven't opened it in a long while because most of my clients run Capture One and Phase. So it's kind of the same. You kind of use it the same way.
Cool. Well, we're hitting the top of the hour here, so if there's any other questions from anyone, let them speak right now. Otherwise, we're going to close this out. I want to thank Ken for joining us today. Thank everyone else in the audience too, and for those watching the replay on this. So let's just
thank you, John, for hosting.
Sure, you're very welcome.
Yeah, thanks, John. Thanks, Ken.
Sure.
Thanks, Jack.
Okay, I'm going to close it out. Be well, all. Thanks.
Okay.
All right.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye.